Hi everyone, my name's Noah Cast, and this is case study 4. So, who's the client? The client's name is Jeffrey Tommins. He's a male with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, and he's about 6 years old. For communication, he's fully vocal. He's up to 6, 7 word sentences, and he's beginning conversational skills, and he's starting to show more and more interest of conversing with us, which is fantastic. We're still working on a couple of identification skills and work skills, but he's coming along incredibly well. Another tidbit of information to know is that he is about to begin school in the fall, and we're going to be practicing skills to prepare for that transition. And you'll see that with our intervention that we put in place. Our primary concerning behavior that we have is aggression, biting, kicking, pinching. And this is something that we were pretty concerned about, especially considering he's about to go to school. So the behavior to look at. So the aggression, we defined it as any instance of the client kicking, hitting, biting, or pinching another individual with enough force to be heard from at least 2 feet away, or it leaves a visible mark. So, for example, if the client kicked the shin of a staff member and it left a bruise, that would be an aggression attempt. If the client bit a client on the arm and it left a mark, that would be another one. As a non-example, if a client is walking behind another peer and bumps into them because that peer stopped, that would not be an aggression attempt. So one thing is what kind of response class this is. So just as a quick review, response classes is a grouping of behaviors or responses that elicit the same impact on the environment. Now, the function that we identified with these behaviors was escape primarily. And so because that all of these behaviors under aggression are trying to get the same thing, this would all fall under that response class. So the response class is being aggression. So everything that would fall under that response class would be kicking, punching with an open or closed fist, spitting at others, or biting would all fit under that definition. So rule governed behavior. So again, as a quick overview, rule governed behavior is not about the contingencies, but rather a behavior is shaped by a written or spoken rule. And similar to that of if you got a parking ticket, you may never have had consequences. You may have never faced a parking ticket before, but you'd still follow the law to try to avoid that parking ticket. So that is what that rule governed behavior is. It's not contingency based, whereas, hey, if you do this, you get this. That would be that. Whereas with rule governed behavior, hey, we have to follow some rule. So for this case, we used a color chart with red, yellow, and green with reinforcers on each level. So we'll get into that here. Now, so these color charts is the client will move up and down based off of the behaviors that they exhibit. And that would mean that they would have different access to high, low, or medium reinforcers. And that's how we are going to be shaping this behavior through this rule contingency of, like, hey, if you engage in behaviors, okay, we have to look at this. So, green level is that they have access to all the toys, including high reinforcers, with no limitations. There will still be trials ran, so nothing will change within the setting. So we'll still be running trials every 30 to 45 seconds, but all the reinforcers can be used in reinforcement of trials. Now, if the client engages in aggression, they would move down to yellow. So they would now, if they're on yellow, they would only have access to medium reinforcers for trials. They would be able to move back up to green after 5 minutes of not engaging in aggressive behaviors while they are in yellow. And we'll get back to that thought in a second. Now, if they are in yellow and they engaged in aggressive behaviors again, they would move down to red. Now they would only have access to non-preferred activities for trials, and on top of that, they would also be moved away from peers, since this is when we're going to start seeing more behaviors. We want to make sure that clients as well as staff are safe, so we're going to move them to another part of the same classroom. We would not be putting them into a seclusion area, just into another table away from other clients. Now, after 5 minutes of being in red, they would be able to move back to yellow. So to kind of go over everything, if they are in green and they engage in behavior, okay, they move down to yellow. If they engage in behaviors again, they would move down to red. Now, if they do not show behaviors for 5 minutes in this red area, okay, they move back up to yellow. And then if they do it again, another 5 minutes of it not engaging behaviors, they would move back up to green. So each level is independent. So you can't just skip an entire level, go back to green. You have to go through all levels. So why do we implement this color chart? So the primary reason and why we use a rule-based system is because this client was going into school. And on top of that, the color chart system was a type of system that was used in his school. So we wanted to give that client some practice with the system while also adding reinforcement contingencies based off of it and include the behaviors as part of that system. So what were the results? So aggression actually decreased by roughly around 15% over the course of 2 months, which is fantastic. And the client positively interacted with the color chart themselves by moving them up and down the chart by themselves. And each time that they move back up to green or they move down to yellow, they would actually express themselves like, oh man, I goofed up. I have to move down to yellow. So they were starting to associate these rules with their behaviors, which was fantastic. And on top of that, they showed a lot of enjoyment when they were on that green level, even going to other staff showing off like, hey, I'm on green. Um, During this intervention, we didn't have any obstacles. And although there was a small increase of behaviors initially, it decreased after roughly around 2 to 3 weeks. So eh, that was our clients. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.